Hey everybody, welcome to my Power Connection broadcast. Bobby Umar here, and I'm very excited to have a fantastic guest today. It's Mark Black, a good friend of mine. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Bobby. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. And I haven't actually done a live stream in about a couple of weeks now. I've taken a bit of a break just with the back to school stuff with the kids and all that. But we are now back. And typically, what I do with these live streams is I broadcast for about 30 to 40 minutes, and we dive deep into a topic around things that either I care about or things that the other expert has experienced and that I also want to learn. So these are things that I care about. I usually talk about personal branding, thought leadership, entrepreneurship, speaking, storytelling, things like that. And then some of my guests will talk about various topics. And, Mark and I have known each other for a long time. So I'm really excited to have him on here. And we're also, we're here to talk about resilience. We're here to talk about, coping with change, finding normalcy in our lives. And I think it's an important thing for us to try to figure out as we navigate some of the craziness that's going on in the world. So if you are joining us, a few kind of ground rules, we'd like you to engage us. So if you have questions for Mark, please comment below. We want you to give your take on things in terms of what we're talking about. If you like what you see, you can kind of like, heart, hand, and light bulb and all those different things you can do. But first thing is, why don't you let us know where you're from? If you're watching this, comment below, where are you from? Are you from North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia? We typically get people from all over, which is kind of cool. And then number two, you can start asking questions about the topic. So that, and if you like even more, share on your page, tag people, but let's get people part of the conversation. So, and I usually broadcast on Wednesdays at 8:45 a.m. But today's an exception. It's Friday. It's pre-Halloween. Send the kids off to Halloween. Did your kids dress up for Halloween this morning, Mark?
Yeah, the two. Actually, all three of them did. No,
okay, what'd they do?
Yeah, Ninja Turtle, and so that's my youngest, who's 4, and then a gingerbread man. That's a Fortnite thing, I guess, for my middle son, and then my daughter was an M&M, so she's got a big red outfit and an M.
Okay.
Yeah.
My kids did. My 12-year-old now did Darth Vader's father. So he basically had a Darth Vader doll in front of him, and then he was the parent dressed up in Darth Vader gear. So weird. I don't even know what that is. And then my daughter did Sailor Mercury, which is the sister of Sailor Moon. She was going to do it with another friend of hers, but then her friend bailed, so she still had the costume, so she wore it. So there you go. Anyway, let's dive in and start. Mark, first off, why don't you share a bit about I'd love to hear. Well, I know your story, and I've known it for a while. Mark and I met actually. We're fellow motivational speakers for the most part, and going around the world speaking about different topics and areas. And we have similar backgrounds, but I remember the first time I worked with him was during a 4 of us put together a group with me, Drew Dudley, him, and Blake Fleischacker, and we did this great event called what was it called? What was it called? The Departed or something? It was like the runway or something.
Departure Gate, right?
Departure Gate. That's what it was. Yeah, that was cool, and I remember that conversation and the audience, and we just had a really great time. So I love what you're doing, and we spent time with your family and our family. So I'd love for you to start telling people a little bit about your story, because your story is compelling, and I think it's going to be a fantastic catalyst for why everyone in this broadcast needs to ask you questions and connect with you. So why don't you start sharing that?
Sure. Thanks, Bobby. So very quickly, I was born with a congenital heart defect that required surgery at birth that eventually led to further complications. I lived my childhood and early adulthood with congestive heart failure and some other heart complications. And ultimately, that led to going on the transplant list. And I waited for about a year on the list, and then was transplanted, received a heart and 2 new lungs in September of 2002. And then a little less than 3 years later, ran my first of 4 marathons. And through that experience of kind of receiving and recovering from the transplant and then going on to run the marathons, gained a little bit of publicity and started to get asked to speak in a couple of places. And then, completely by accident, really, but because I'd been asked to speak and got some good feedback, became kind of the career goal. And it took a couple of years to kind of get that off the ground. And then I've been speaking professionally since 2005, I guess. So doing that and doing some coaching all around how do we build resilience and stay resilient so that we can thrive no matter the circumstances. And I think, given what's going on in the world in the last year or so, but particularly in the last 6 months, it's a pretty relevant thing to be talking about. So.
And speaking of resilience, as COVID did hit, I mean, how did that affect you, and kind of how have you been able to navigate through that?
Well, you are well plugged in with other thought leaders, speakers, people that do what we do. Obviously, it had a major impact on the speaking part of my business because it's sort of predicated on the idea that you can put hundreds of people in the same room together,
right.
which right now we can't do. So, I mean, from a really practical perspective, my calendar for I remember we came back from a March break trip in Florida, like the early second week of March, 7th or 8th of March, something like that. And the following week, I received emails and phone calls that wiped out my entire calendar for the rest of this year and early into next year. That was very, very difficult. That's the majority of the income from my business. And so it was, it took some time to kind of process that and figure out what to do. And then I've spent the last 6 months or so, pivoting, re-engineering what my business looks like. Obviously, trying to do some virtual things like this. But it hasn't been easy, and it continues to be a challenge. But there are also, I think, kind of trying to predict is difficult, but looking 6 months, a year, 2 years out from now, I think there are going to be some benefits. I know there are going to be some benefits that come from what we've been through in the last 7 or 8 months. So,
and so let me ask you this then: before COVID happened, what was your primary message about resilience?
So there's a couple things. One is that we all have the capacity to be resilient. I think there's a general misunderstanding from people that it's sort of this inborn natural skill, or not even skill, but like character traits that you just sort of have it or you don't. And some people are naturally resilient. We think of, the Terry Foxes and these big heroic stories. And we discount all of the ways that we are resilient every single day. And second, that you can then build on whatever, you have in terms of a toolbox and learn more skills and more coping strategies, et cetera, to become more resilient. And so that's part one. Part two is why it's so critical. I really believe the pace of change is not slowing down. That's not news to anybody, I don't think. Mm-hmm. And so, we are leaving or have left an age where your value comes from your knowledge. I'm not saying that knowledge is still not valuable, but, gone are the days where, you trained in a certain area and you have this knowledge base and you pull from that knowledge base every day at your workplace, and that's why you're valuable. And now a lot more of why you're valuable is going to be about how quickly can you adapt to the latest problem, change, issue, and get back on track again. How good are you at taking problems and turning them into opportunities? How willing are you to go with the flow? All of those things are going to become increasingly important, not just at home, but also in the workplace.
And one of the things the reason I asked you what your message was before, because I know you've been talking about this for a while, and I just think that your message is needed even more now. But what I'm curious about is, given what you've been through in the last 6 to 8 months, has that message evolved or changed in any way?
I think it's just gotten more emphatic. Yeah. Like, I just want to scream to you. So one of the ways, for example, is there's definitely been challenges in my business, and I don't want to discount that. And I also don't want to pretend like everything has been easy for me during the last 6 to 8 months, because it hasn't. But it hasn't been the oh my God, the world is ending kind of experience that a lot of people I've talked to seem to be experiencing. And again, I don't want to make that sound like they're wrong or that they have some character flaw because they're born that way. I get it. I think one of the benefits that I have is having gone through this other experience where I was literally on death's door for a year. And what I learned through that process gave me some perspective. And that's one of the resilience tools that I try and help people with is like, let's put everything into perspective. Let's step back 20 feet from our problems and let's really examine what is actually going on. So let's not make sure that we don't conflate reality versus our emotional interpretations of reality, right? Like we all do that. We have an issue come up and our emotions are attached to it and we blow it up in our mind. That's just that's nature. And so it's kind of trying to be more objective about that. And also understanding or having the confidence, I guess, that one of the things I tell people to do, for example, a tool that I give people that people can try today if they want, is to make a laundry list of difficult things you've been through in your life.
Right.
What are some things that if you were going to make a resume of your biggest accomplishments, because they often go together, and the biggest challenges you've overcome, often those are the same things, what would those be? And then you look at those and you remind yourself regularly of those things so that you can then say to yourself, if I can go through that, then I can go through this. And so I have this massive challenge in my past that I can refer back to, but we all have versions of that or a collection of maybe smaller ones that give you then the confidence to say, geez, if I did this, and this, then I can handle this. It's not to say this doesn't matter, this isn't difficult, it is. But I've got a bunch of skills and mindset and experience that I acquired by going through all of this other stuff. And if I apply that to this new problem, then I can be a lot more effective than I might imagine.
Well, you give me a lot of stuff to unpack here. That's fantastic. So first off, one of the things that I thought about too is that when COVID hit for me too, so same thing. It was slower. Like I found over a period of about a month that, okay, wow, everything's been canceled. All my speaking gigs, everything was canceled. I was like, wow, that's a lot of income and money. And but my wife, who was working full time, she was more freaked out than I was. And she's like, how can you be so calm and zen? And I didn't really know. I mean, I was like, well, I've been an entrepreneur, so I guess there's something there. I'm a parent, so I guess there's something there. But part of me was like, well, I mean, things are out of my control, and there's not much I can do about it except for try to pivot and find something else I could do, like, and try to figure that stuff out. And that's kind of where I was. I was very zen about it, and not saying it's not hard. It's definitely hard. I mean, you're questioning lots of things in terms of your self-worth and how to deal with this thing, and can I be better than this other thing? One of the big things that I was trying to come to terms with was the fact that I love being in front of like 1,000 people. The energy, on stage, like as a performer too, and so the fact that I'm coming to terms with that may never be the new normal anymore. Next year maybe there'll be groups of 10 or 20 in a room, but that's it. It's never going to be me on stage in front of 1,000 people. So I'm coming to terms with that because that was one thing that would kind of fuel me and feed my soul, per se. And so I'm coming to terms with that. I'm not going to have that anymore. So how am I going to feed my soul? And that's something I have to kind of figure out as we go along. I also love your whole idea of looking at things that, like, challenges you've been through. And you have this really great thing, because normally what happens is most people look at the vision ahead of where they want to go, right? And they think about that. So, for example, when I think about my health journey, I think, okay, when I think about the resilience for my health journey, I think about where I want to be, and I envision myself being healthier and all that kind of stuff, and I want to go there. But I don't think about the challenges behind me that I've been through, and I think that's really fascinating. Is your health situation the main one you go through, or are there other ones you think of?
No, I mean, I can think of moments, periods where my business was really struggling. I can think of, a mental health challenge that I had after the transplant. I think of challenges in our marriage. I think of like all kinds of things. But yes, I mean, to your point, I think one of the challenges that everybody has, but certainly people, for example, entrepreneurs, goal-oriented people especially, one of the setbacks or pitfalls that we can fall into is that we we tend, as you say, to be so future focused, right? What's the next goal? What's the next goal? What's the next goal? And there's benefits to that mindset, but there are also drawbacks. And one of them is forgetting the progress that we've made. So you mentioned, your personal health journey. I know that you've, worked hard on diet and exercise and you've had lots of progress and also some setbacks because that's the nature of being human. Again, I go to the gym, for example, and I'm always focused on, can I lift a little more today than I did last time? Well, then COVID hits and I can't go to the gym for like a month. And so naturally what happens is you go back and you can't lift what you could before, but I smartly, or I don't know, I wouldn't say that I'm so smart, but one of the things that I did that was smart was I kept a log of my lifts, really for my own personal satisfaction and sense of progress. And so when I went back to the gym, naturally I had lost some strength because I could exercise at home, but I didn't have big barbells or heavy weights. I had like little hand weights. And, but I also looked all the way back and realized that, okay, yeah, I've lost a little from 2 months ago, but I'm still like 100% or 150% in some cases further along than I was when I started at CrossFit a year and a half ago. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's just framing that it's not just lost, it's a setback, right? And in the longer term picture, I'm way further ahead than I was when I started. One of the things that I always tell myself at the gym as well, one of the things that I'm kind of famous for saying at the gym is, well, I'm ahead of everybody that didn't get off the couch today, right? So no matter how much I struggled in a particular workout, because I have bad workouts all the time, and I do group classes, so often, I'm one of the last ones to complete this timed workout or whatever. And it's very easy to just kind of look around the room and go, oh, geez, I suck, like I'm the last, or I lifted the least or whatever. But then I think, yeah, but there were 10 of us in here today, which means everybody else wasn't working out today. I could have stayed on the couch today and I didn't. So I'm that much further ahead than I would have been if I had done nothing. It's that sense of progress. One of the biggest sources of motivation for people, and people ask all the time, I'm sure you get this question too, like, how do I stay motivated? One of the great ways to stay motivated, one of the things that we need as humans is we need the need to grow and the need to feel like we're making progress. And so one of the ways to do that is to just plain keep track. And looking back helps you to do that, right? Why do our kids love it when we put them up against the wall and we measure them and they see that they've grown this month from 6 months ago, whatever? Like, you and I can't do that anymore, but there was a time when we could. Why do they love that? Well, there's this sense of progress, right? Like, oh, last month I was here and now I'm here. Right. We need to give ourselves the opportunity to see that progression so that we don't feel as stuck, because feeling stuck is a really frustrating feeling.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And we're talking to Mark Black, who is an expert on resilience and a fellow motivational speaker and coach. We're talking about dealing with change and trying to find some normalcy in what's going on in the world today. People are commenting, Chase is cool, and Dilpreet has a question, which I'll get to in a second. Erica says, how are you, Bobby? I'm fine, thank you for asking. And Abir says there's an echo. Well, I'm not sure what that is, but if anyone else can deal with the echo, that's fine. There is a question here from Dilpreet. And actually, one thing, before I get to the question, one of the things we're doing is we're talking about resilience, because also we're going to be hosting a LinkedIn local meetup, online, virtual, on resilience. And it's going to feature, I'll be there hosting it. Mark's going to be there along with some other really amazing resilience experts. So I encourage you to join us and let us know. I'll put the link to the event in the comments, but we're very excited about that. It's going to be on November 19th, called Resilience in the Eye of the Storm. And also, I would encourage you to follow Mark Black and check out his book, downloadable book, which is available. There's a link on the post here, so you can maybe check that out. Let me get to the question. This one's from Dilpreet, and I think it's a tough one. So I'm a wheelchair user, and my company put me furlough without pay. I have no source income, and I get rejections daily because there are better candidates available to companies right now. How do you suggest I deal with this? What can I do not to people see my capability rather than my disability? So I guess what do you want? I think to rephrase you, how do I get people to see his capability versus disability?
Yeah, great question. So I mean, there's a couple of parts to that, right? First of all, it's like, how do you deal with being furloughed, which is kind of, I don't want to say it's separate because it's all part of your experience, but at the same time, everybody who's been furloughed right now can relate to that, even though they're not in a wheelchair. And then you have the issue of how do you get people to define you by by what you can do versus what you can't do. And I hope this doesn't sound overly simplistic, but I think a lot of it comes down to your mindset and the subconscious communication that you exude out to people with how you see yourself, right? So I don't know you, and if we did some coaching work together, I could find out if there's stuff going on there. But I can tell you, you don't see it here because we're online. But like I'm 4'10". So I was always the smallest kid in my class. I'm always the shortest guy in every room. But I can't tell you the last time I even remembered that was true. And that's because I've done the work internally to have the confidence to say, this only matters if I decide it matters. Right now, that doesn't mean that nobody else notices. I get comments all the time. Kids point at me in grocery stores because they can recognize I'm an adult because they have facial hair, and yet I don't measure up to the size requirements, and they're literally confused, right? They'll be like, "Mommy, how come, there was a time in my life when that bothered me. And now I'm able to, again, remove the personal emotion from it and just go, that's a kid making an observation that makes complete sense from that kid's perspective. Mm-hmm. So we all have challenges, obstacles, character traits, physical attributes, whatever the case is, that we could justifiably use as reasons why we can't do X, Y, or Z. And again, it's not to minimize the fact that isn't true. It's to say, okay, that is true, but what do I want also to be true along with that, right? What reality do I want to create in addition to this? So it's not about, when we talk about positive psychology and positive thinking, it's not the mistake a lot of people make is they think it means being Pollyanna and pretending like everything is great when it's not, and not being realistic. And that's not about, it's not that at all. It's about saying, where am I going to spend my mental energy and time? Am I focused on the things that I can do, the opportunities that I do have, the things that I might create, or am I focused on what I can't do, what's in the way, and why I can't do things? Both of those things are true. The question is, what are we looking at most of the time? And so to your question, I would say, what are those capabilities that you want people to know about? Are you talking about those? If you're on social media, are you posting about those? Are those the things that you're highlighting in resumes? Are those the things that you're focused on in your interview? Are you bringing an interviewer's attention back to those things when they want to talk about, well, how do you get around in your chair or whatever? Those things your obstacles will be as much of an issue for other people as you make them for yourself, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so the more that you can make them a non-issue, the more they're a non-issue, and then people are freed up to focus on the other things.
Yeah, I think, Mark, you make an excellent point, particularly about the mindset piece. I think that's something that we all need to deal with. And I find that even during the whole COVID experience, there are people out there, like among my friends, who are constantly talking about, they're very negative. Like they're falling into that negative, rabbit hole, and just talking about all the dread, and they're not really, they're having trouble finding a way to navigate that. And so that kind of negative thinking can get you into a hole that's deeper to dig out of. I think that's important. And the second thing you say, which I think resonates with me, is again, how you position yourself. I mean, personal branding, and what's your brand out there in terms of how you position yourself. So yes, to your point, are you creating content around the stuff that makes you awesome, the things you're capable of, things that you're expert in, and putting that out there, and not even talking about the other things too. So I think those are really, really good points. And for the most part, I think when we talk about finding normalcy, I mean that's part of the conversation today in terms of how we find normalcy and what's going on. I mean, most people will say, well, it's not normal, right? So it's not normal, and there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of overwhelm, and we're dealing with this and we don't know when it's going to be over. And so, when it comes to that, I mean, what are your thoughts on trying to find normalcy amidst all the storm and chaos?
So one of the things that I teach in my framework when I'm doing trainings or speaking is adaptability. And I talk to people about how important it is to be adaptable and to get better at being adaptable, because we have this conception in our brains that there is such a thing as normal. And what you thought of as normal like let's say a year ago before any of this happened, and so this is normal life, was completely abnormal, would be completely abnormal if you showed that, if you played a movie of your day, for example, to your grandparents, they would be completely abnormal to them, right? Like there's so much of what you do every day that they would just be like, what's happening there? And what are you doing? And what is this thing? And so much of what you're doing is completely abnormal to somebody even 50 years ago, right? Even 5 years ago, in some cases, depending on how cutting edge you are with some of the things, like what we're doing right now, right? We wouldn't be doing 10 years ago or 5 years ago, but now it's completely normal to do. So we have to get out of this idea that like normal is a static thing that we can get back to. Like the world is ever changing. There's lots of metaphors. There's the river that's never the same twice and whatever. The world is the same way. We're not going back to anything. That's why, that's not to get political, but the whole idea of like make America great again is like such a ridiculous statement, because it's like we're going to turn back the clock and go back to some magic time when everything was great. Like that's not a possibility. And even if it worked, would we want to do it? Right? So we have to just, normalcy, it's more about kind of how comfortable can I get with being uncomfortable, or how comfortable can I get with constant change?
Oh, that's pretty deep.
And because I think we also overvalue comfort. So one of the things that I talk to people about when it comes to being resilient is doing difficult things. And doing difficult things on purpose to teach ourselves that we can do difficult things, right? So how are you resilient when things are really hard? By doing really hard things all the time, so that when things are externally opposed on you that are really hard, you can go, okay, I've done hard things before. I can do this. As opposed to, oh no, I don't control the situation. I get really angry. Look, we all get frustrated and angry when something happens, but I talk a lot about shortening the gap. Okay, so incident happens, I get frustrated, I get angry, I get worried, I get all of those things. Eventually, I then go, okay, now what am I going to do about it? Now, that period between I get angry and what am I going to do about it can last years in some cases, or it can last seconds. How much can you shorten that gap so that you're not wasting? Because all that time is wasted, right?
Right.
Wasted, right? The really simple example: you wake up in the morning and it's, we're Canadian. Pretty soon we're going to wake up in the morning and it's going to be a snowstorm. And I don't know anybody who's like, yay, it's a snowstorm today. So we all kind of go, oh, crap. Now there are people who are going to let that snowstorm ruin the whole morning or the whole day. And there are others who are going to let it ruin 5 minutes and then go, oh yeah, I live in Canada and it's January and this is what's to be expected. So I'll get on my jacket and my hat and my mittens because I'm prepared, and I'll go out and live the rest of the day. So shortening that gap makes the quality of your life better. It doesn't remove the problems, it makes the problems small.
That's a good point. It reminds me actually of one thing that I've been doing to deal with resilience is I've been doing this thing, a meditation app, where I reflect on two different things, which is the saboteur mindset and the sage mindset. And the saboteur mindset is the stuff you talked about: anxiety, worry, fear, doubt, concern, all that kind of stuff, and stress. But the sage idea is to be like a Jedi and calm yourself. And within 5 seconds or, a couple minutes, you can kind of relax yourself. You focus on meditation or your physical being, and you let that stuff go. You label it and you let it go. And I found that practice to be quite helpful to me in the last 6 months. I've been doing it for about 4 or 5 months, but it's been quite helpful to me because when you're talking, because eventually, it doesn't mean you don't feel those things. And oh, it's snowing. Oh man, okay, well, let me put on my boots and let me go on and have a good day. You can still do that. So for me, I think that was very helpful to me. And then, but it reminded me of something else you said, which is, you talked about practice. So is resilience an exercise? Like, you have to exercise your resilience muscle per se. Can you maybe explain that? Like, is that something that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because I think a big part of resilience is the confidence you have in your ability to be resilient, if that makes some sense. So the way to gain confidence is practice, right? How do you know that you can dive into the water and swim to the other side? Because you've done it a bunch of times. The first time you did it, you had no confidence, but somebody else was there to teach you and help you. And then you did it several times, and then pretty soon your brain goes, oh, I've done this before. I'm not going to drown. It's going to be okay. resilience is the same thing, right? It's like, oh, I've been through a hard time. I can do this again. I've faced financial challenges before. I can do that again. So what I'm suggesting now, maybe right now is not the time. If you're still really struggling just to kind of get by right now, then that's your practice. But when things are calmer, instead of kind of settling into comfort, I encourage people to continuously make themselves uncomfortable. And that can look very different for different people. That can be anything from, going to do exercise and you by nature making yourself uncomfortable because it's painful. I mean, painful is loosely, it's uncomfortable. You can is taking a different route to work in the morning so that you have to think about which way you're going, and maybe you have to leave a little earlier because you're going a longer way or whatever. Anything that you can do, you can eat with your other hand. Like, all of these things sound silly, but what it's doing again is it's teaching you, I can do things that are hard. I can do things that I thought, I'm not sure if I can do this or not. I take cold showers regularly. I had one this morning. When I was first introduced to the idea, I thought it was ridiculous. Like, why would I do this? It's not fun. And what I learned was that's exactly why you do it, because it's not fun. Because even now, and I've done it pretty consistently for like 7 months now. Even now, when I go to get in the water, I don't want to get in. Yeah, and there are days when I just give myself a break and I say, you know what, I'm not going to do it today. But most of the time, I'll either just push ahead or I'll start warm and then make it cold. So I let myself kind of ease into it. Right. But the thing is, after it's over, I go, I didn't want to do it. It was difficult, but I'm still here. I've suffered no long-term damage, and I've got a little bit more confidence that I can do that again and whatever else I have to do for the rest of the day, right? So again, that inventory of difficult things you've done, the continuous practice of doing things that are uncomfortable are all ways to build your flexibility and adaptability and confidence that you can handle whatever life throws at you.
Right. Okay. And we're talking to Mark Black, who's a resilience expert, and he's going to be featured in a LinkedIn local on November 19th called Resilience and Out of the Storm, where he's going to share his expertise. Mark, and again, if you are joining this call, by all means, ask questions about resilience, about dealing with change, dealing with normalcy. I had one other comment I want to make about the normalcy thing, which was, everyone talks about the new normal, and you said that it's constantly evolving and growing as that timeline as we go along, which I thought was really fascinating. And so I often refer to it as the now normal, because the now normal is changing. Like 10 years ago, I would walk out of the house with my money, my cards, my credit cards, and whatever, all my cards, and then my keys. Then I added my phone. Right, the phone is now always in my pocket. Now what's always in my pocket is my mask. I have a mask and my phone and my keys and my cards and my money. And actually, I actually don't have cash anymore. I just carry the cards because now everything's pretty much card based. And so that's the now normal for me in terms of going. And maybe in 6 months there'll be another newer now normal that I'm going to kind of focus on. So so if people have questions for Mark, please comment below. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And if you watch the replay, you can also ask questions and tag us, and we can also answer those questions. Mark, tell us a bit more about your work in terms of how people can connect with you and maybe some of the programs you offer. We'd love to hear about that.
Sure. Yeah. So I have a coaching program that I call Level Up Your Life, and basically what it's geared for entrepreneurs especially, but really anybody that's looking to kind of go to a next level, either physically, mentally, emotionally, or financially, and because it doesn't really matter, right? The mindset shifts that need to happen and the accountability that you need are the same. And I take you through this framework, a lot of which we've kind of talked or hinted at today. And there's not, I'd love to say that there's like this magic secret that only I have. Look, bottom line is we all need some form of accountability. We all need clarity around where we're going, and that's incredibly difficult right now because there's so much kind of chaos. That's why I love the title of your event, Eye of the Storm, because in the eye of the storm, it's calm, right? Chaos is all around it, and it's calm in the very middle. And that's what we need to strive to do. We need to strive to not, like, what a lot of us do is we seek shelter in the storm, right? So there's a big storm, and we want to like hunker down and go in our shell and wait till the storm is over. The problem is, like, this particular storm is gone, but there's another storm coming. We don't know what it is, but something else is coming, and then after that, something else is coming, and after that's like, it's not going to end. That's called life, right? So instead of having this mentality of like, I'm just going to hunker down and wait, we have to figure out, okay, how can I get better at walking through the storm and being within my own mind, my own spirit, being calm despite the storm. That's right. That's the work of resilience, is about knowing that, being able to take out the umbrella or put on the raincoat or whatever the metaphor is and walk out in the storm and function anyway, right? A lot of us, when COVID hit, those of us who took it seriously at least, probably hunkered down. We're just like, you know what, I'll just stay in my house. We'll do this for 2 or 3 weeks. It'll blow over and we'll go back to normal. And now we're 8 months into this new normal.
Yeah.
We had to at some point realize, okay, to do that means I got to wear a mask and I've got to hand sanitize, and maybe we have to socially distance at work, or whatever the things are, the coping and the adaptability we've needed to do. But we figured out a way to exist in this storm, right? And then if you've done that for a little while, maybe you can even strive to get to the next level of like excelling and thriving in the middle of the storm. But that it's a mindset thing, right? A lot of us look at what we've lost. We look at the businesses that have failed because of COVID and that are failing. But understand that as many businesses are struggling and failing, there are new businesses or businesses that existed that all of a sudden are booming because of COVID, right? And it's not to say that, some businesses are uniquely positioned to do better than others, but a lot of that is also about the mindset of like, am I looking at what's gone, or am I looking at what this new reality has created? Right? Where are the opportunities in this? So for example, for you and I, like, I'm the same way. In fact, I made a post on Facebook yesterday because I got a memory that came up on my wall from 3 years ago, and I'm standing in front of hundreds of people and they're and I'm like, man, I miss that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I really miss that. But knowing now, gotten through the acceptance stage of like, that's not coming back, at least not for a while.
Yeah.
So now what? Like, what am I going to do instead? What it's helped me to realize is, or forced me to do, is work more on my coaching, because that scales and because I can do it from home. And I've begun to create, it's not done yet, but I've begun to create an environment where I can still work with people, still help people, and do it from home, which is awesome because I have 3 young kids. And it used to be that to do a 1-hour keynote, I was gone from home for 3 days because of where I live geographically and trains and all of that nonsense. It's not to say I will never do that again, but I'd been talking about doing online courses and doing more coaching for years.
Yes.
But I wasn't uncomfortable enough in what was going on to force me to do it, right? And then COVID came and went, whack, now you have no choice. Like, now it's sink or swim, figure it out, right? And I hope for people that once they get over the shock, which hopefully by now we have, and the anger and all of that, that's all normal, that's all fine, but we want to shorten the gap and now go, okay, how am I going to not only exist, but hopefully thrive in a new way in this new environment?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And so in terms of people reaching out to you and connecting, what should they do?
You can send me an email, mark@markblack.ca. And you can find me on all the social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at Mark Black Speaks.
Got it. Okay, that's great. And curious thing about the title of our LinkedIn logo, which is "Resilience in the Eye of the Storm." It came up with the idea that the last 6 months has been a bit of quite a storm. We weathered the storm. Now we're kind of back to the kids are back to school. There's a bit of routine. We're still monitoring what's going on, right? But now we're kind of that eye of the storm where we have a little bit of calm to now plan for the next phase, which could be more storming, of course. But that's kind of what it's all about. This is the perfect time for us to think about how we're going to handle 2021, because we have no idea how long it's going to extend, how long it's going to affect us in Canada, the U.S., and around the world. So that's really what it's about. This is a time for us to think about it, process, plan, and hopefully get to a better place so we can navigate this. Because it's 3 months into it, we were like, wow, how are we going to navigate the mental mindset of this piece, right? But now it's here for a long time, so we have to navigate this much longer. So that's where the name came from. So so listen, thanks so much for joining us, and everybody who's joined us on the call. If you have questions for Mark, please comment below. please connect with him. Download his free book. That's in the link in the post. And also you can reach out to him if you have any questions. Once again, this is the Power of Connection broadcast. And I usually broadcast every Wednesdays at 8:45 a.m. Next, I'm hoping to have actually another panelist from our LinkedIn local join us as well. That's to be confirmed, but I will keep you guys posted. And what's funny now is LinkedIn, I can keep the posted with the LinkedIn stories, just like on Instagram. I do stories that, hey, here's what's coming up, which is great. So, yeah. But other than that, Mark, any other last thoughts or last questions you want to ask the audience or things you want to share?
No, I reiterate what you've already said. If people want to reach out, please do. I'm pretty active on social, so I'll try. If you have a question or a comment, I'll do my best to reply fairly quickly. And I just invite you to have that possibility mindset, right? To think about what good can come from what we're dealing with right now. What opportunities are there out there? How can I leverage what's happening and use it to be helpful or productive for myself? And to your point, Bobby, I love that you're doing the meditation thing. To get to that place of problem solving, we first have to get to the place of accepting what's already happening. And meditation is one of the ways of doing that, of just kind of letting go of the stuff that we can't fix so that we have the time and energy to focus on the things that we maybe can do something about.
Yeah, it's a new thing for me, but it's working really well. And listen, are you doing anything for Halloween tomorrow? Like, what are you doing?
The kids are going out. We figured they got masks on already for Halloween, so there's no reason that they can't go out for Halloween. So we'll be doing the Halloween thing.
Yeah, things are better in Brunswick where you're at, so I'm jealous.
Yeah, we're pretty fortunate here. We have one active case in this half of the province right now. So
that's really good. Well, okay, well, Mark, all the best. Thanks so much, and thank everyone for joining the Power Connection show. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Bobby.